Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Today Television. I'm Sakshi Patra and this is a special edition as far as GST 2.0 reforms are concerned. What we are given to understand is that 3rd and 4th of September is when the next GST Council meeting is going to be taking place. It's going to be the 56th Council meeting, and this is going to be the meeting where the final stamping on the newer rates is going to be done. What we are also given to understand is that the group of ministers on GST rationalization has accepted Centre's proposal to move to a two-tier slab structure for GST, which will have 5% and 18% rates as well, which actually gives us to understand that a lot of industries, sectors that have been looking at a 28% GST rate might see a reduction to 18%. And similarly, all those industries, sectors, products that were imposed with a 12% rate could actually have, a case in point to see a reduction to 5%. In this conversation, what we are going to be doing is to speak to top experts and help us decode what is the end, product that we are going to be getting at, how is the end user going to get benefited with this GST rationalization, which are the key sectors that are going to be seeing the maximum benefit also come in, and what does it mean for the overall festive season that has already kick-started with Ganesh Chaturthi. So let's start to welcome our top guests who are joining in on this program with us. Mr. Abhishek Rastogi joins in. He's the founder of Rastogi Chambers. Also joining him is Maulik Manakiwala. He's the partner at Indirect Tax at BDO India. Warm welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for taking the time out for this conversation. Mr. Rastogi, let me kickstart by understanding from you the broad idea of moving to a two-slab structure, 5% and 18%. What's your thought with regards to that? How easier is it going to get for an average Indian to now look at a simplified structure rather than a 4 or 5 tier structure earlier? Could you unmute yourself, sir?
I'm sorry. Sakshi, so I think the intention is very clear. The endeavor of the government remains that the classification disputes have to come down. So the industry benefits from it because classification leads to, resolution only in court. So the litigation cost comes down. Now, what will also happen is that some of these products are consumed by middle class and consumed by masses and are also linked to Diwali festival. A lot of these products are coming either in the category of 12%, which goes to 5%, and several of these categories which may pertain to even, things like refrigerators, fridges, microwave, etc., which are today taxed at 28%, comes down to 18%, including some variants of cars, which will be very, very critical for the middle class income group. During Diwali or around Diwali time, a lot of people, the spending increases in terms of purchasing either for the gifting purposes or with respect to the family would want to gift something to themselves. So from that perspective, I think it's important that most of this rationalization from the industry perspective, from classification issue, and from the perspective of the consumer, the rate must be rationalized before Diwali or around Diwali. And with this GST Council meeting, which is scheduled in the first week of October, it looks like that these decisions will be taken. What will be more important to see is the debate on how this rate rejig would lead to the revenue sharing between the state and the center. Because the states may have that apprehension that will there be any reduction in the overall collection of the taxes. So I think what will be important is, I think, two factors. One, how would the center and the states, will there be some new formula derived if there is reduction in the revenue? What happens to the price fixation? Because the ultimate benefit comes only when the benefit is passed on to the consumers. There's no anti-profiteering now. So what happens to that will be the key factor.
Absolutely. Let me also get Maulik here to get his views as well. Help me understand when it comes to the rate rationalization that we are expecting to see. So many sectors we are expecting that the rates will come down from the erstwhile rates. The big question is, will it really benefit the end consumer at large? Something that even Mr. Rastogi was highlighting, that whether the entire tax cut will be passed on as price cuts on these several products. How are you looking at that aspect?
Yeah. Hi, Sakshi. So basically, with respect to that, I think the whole purpose of getting this rate rationalization in place is
Yeah.
we are understanding this from 53rd Council meeting, wherein it was pretty much categorically given to GOM that you will have to study, you will have to come up with your sort of views on simplifying the structure as well as like what Mr. Rastogi rightly pointed out to reduce the litigations with respect to classifications. Entire rate reduction structure is something that government is looking at. So with more simplified structures, we understand that majority of the products from 12% will move to 5% and from 28% to 18%. So this invariably helps in reducing the cost of the products. Subject to there is no inverted duty blockage, because that is also one more important factor that one will have to see. Also, we had some provision like anti-profiteering provisions when GST was launched. Now, in over here in GST 2.0, we'll have to see that if government is again revoking that particular anti-profiteering provisions, or are they coming up with some sort of formula to ensure that this entire rate cut benefit has been passed on to the end consumer or not. But ultimately, once these reductions will be in place, definitely we can see a positive impact on overall economy. And definitely, if I'm reading it right, then it's a proper fiscal stimulus, because reduction in GST is now way larger than even reduction in income taxes, because this is ultimately going to bring a lot of more disposable income in the hands of consumer. So definitely this should help.
Okay, just to give an overview to all our viewers also, what is it that we understand as of now from our sources to Business Today television? Karishma Sudani has been breaking this story all through yesterday, and what we're given to understand is some of the products that will now turn cheaper for all of our viewers is condensed milk, butter, nuts, dates, cheese and citrus fruits. They will all, they're all likely to come to a 5% GST rate from 12% earlier. So these are the everyday items that you can expect that their prices will go down. Apart from this, even stuff like cocoa butter, cocoa powder, chocolates as well, cornflakes, pastries, cakes, biscuits, they are also likely to get cheaper because they used to attract 18% GST rate, and that's now going to be, that's likely to come down to 5% as well. So that also is a category of products that you can look at as well. What, however, could get expensive is what we are given to understand is pan masala, for instance, one of the sin goods that we are looking at. Even caffeinated beverages could get expenses. What our sources have told us is that non-alcoholic beverages, cigarettes, tobacco, these could also get expensive as well. Now, what there could be is a bonanza for fertilizers and for textile sectors, because both these sectors could now attract 5%. So they will be cheaper, in terms of the key products that you could be looking at as well. So these are some of the FMCG products that you could be probably looking at that could get cheaper for you. What could, however, get also expensive is high-end electric vehicles. Now, we all know that how to promote electric vehicles, the government had been consistently keeping lower GSTs, lower taxation for EVs. This could change from the current GST Council meeting. What we are given to understand, as per sources to Business Today television, is that the GOM panel has asked for an increase in GST on the high-end electric vehicles. They have submitted proposal to increase GST from 5% to 18% on the high-end electric vehicles. So questions on how Tesla will probably priced from here on as well. There's also a question on the band above 20 lakh rupees as far as these EVs are concerned. So let me come to Abhishek ji for first thought on the EV space particularly. How do you expect that space to really go forward from here, the luxury vehicles in the EV space?
So, Sakshi, I think the intention is very clear. When it comes to luxury and sin goods, the tax would be at a higher rate of 40%. So, not 18%, 40%. But it would not necessarily lead to a situation where the taxes would be more, or it will become costly. These products will become costly because till yesterday also there was cess on this. So while the rate was 28%, there were cesses to the extent of 25%, which made the effective rate much higher than even 40%. So even if the council tomorrow decides to tax these luxury products or the sin goods at 40%, I don't see there'll be major inflation or the gap in the purchasing power between the pre change and the post change. I don't see that happening in the near future. What will also happen is when these are taxed at 40%, which means that the larger basket of the output taxes gets the benefit of the input taxes. So tax cascading would be less. But yes, I think as far as the EVs are concerned, there is a discussion which is already going on based on the capacity, based on the pricing, that certain classes of EVs, mostly towards the high end, would definitely be going to the higher rate, including the CBU units which are getting imported still within India. Those would be so Teslas of the world, which would not start manufacturing immediately, but in the initial phase, they would, import all of these completely built up units, would face the higher tax rate.
Okay, let's also talk about, Maulik, with you, the treatment on sin goods, for instance. Now, what we are given to understand from our sources is that a special rate of 40% has been proposed by centre. State Ministers panel, however, have proposed 35% plus an additional levy on that. Abolition of compensation cess leading to revenue downfall is something that is being talked about as well. And states have requested for additional levy to replace the cess. How are you looking at all of these aspects, with respect to what could come in the final meeting?
Yeah, so particularly with respect to the sin goods, I think earlier it was being compensated with the compensation cess. And since we know that compensation cess is on the verge of phasing out, so what I'm also listening from the sources is that government is also contemplating to bringing in NCCD, that is National Calamity and Contingent Duty. So that was the concept that was there earlier in the excise regime as well. So probably they're planning to replace this compensation cess with NCCD, and that would eventually be like 40% plus the NCCD duty. So ultimately, the rates would be on a higher side what they are getting right now, because phasing out compensation cess is not so easy, because there are a lot of states which are right now completely dependent on the GST as their budget. So for those states, there will be a huge deficit, and particularly from that scenario, central will have to be mindful in even phasing out such duties. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, Abhishek ji, with respect to the states, there has always been a tussle between the centre and the states with respect to GST, compensation cess. Do you think there will be enough thought that will be given to that aspect as well, since we are already given into the demand of simplifying the GST tax structure? Should the states aspect be also taken into this consideration of the GST Council meeting? Will that be resolved as well?
Sakshi, this is very important and pertinent question right now, because the states would not want to lose the revenue at all.
Yeah.
So I think there are four models which are being worked out. One is the IGST style model, that even if the rate goes down, or from the sin products, how this gets distributed to the state and the center. The second is the current model, that everything merges into the GST pool. The third is that the cess gets collected, or the additional taxes on the 40%, the additional part of it gets collected completely, and it comes completely with the center. Center allocates that to those states where there is a loss. And the fourth model which is being worked out is the conditional sharing, that there'll be a conditional sharing on certain products or certain items with these states, so that they do not incur any losses in the near future. So all of those four models are being worked out, and it is expected that in the GST Council meet, those models with arithmetic calculations will be explained, because the center would want, the GST Council would want to work as a team, so that there is no disruption to the rate rationalization proposal made by the center.
Okay, fair point. Let me also get in Maulik here to help us understand what could be a more saner structure between the centre and the states to really look at, that would resolve both the revenue loss issue as well as bridge the trust deficit between the centre and the states.
So, particularly with respect to center and state deficits, I think it's a long-term battle, as well as there is a huge gap with respect to the expectations what states are having, as well as what center is fulfilling. And probably that's where still we are not listening to anything with respect to oil and gas. So once they bring in oil and gas into the ambit of GST, then probably it would be a different equation and a different math. So right now, any which ways they kept certain things like alcohol as well as oil and gas out of this ambit of GST. That is merely to compensate the states with respect to those losses which they are having right now. So once we have some clarity on that aspect, maybe states would be in a better position at that point of time. and those deficits might also be a bit on the lower end, then probably some call can be taken. Also, with respect to the formula for compensation cess as well as the IGST distribution, if center is coming up with something like NCD or something, then really they will also definitely look at the formula, and maybe based on that, they will definitely give some sort of relaxation to the states as well as some sort of extra budget to them.
Okay, Abhishek, let's also try and understand this aspect. There was this large fear that the festive season could be a washout because only the newer rates will kick in later, and people would probably defer their purchases, be it for autos, be it for consumer durables at large. People would only want to defer their purchases. Probably the government has listened to the industry plea, and that's why we are seeing, probably a preponing of the GST Council meeting, and probably the rates will be into effect by Navratri is what we are given to understand. How then do you expect the festive season to pan out with the newer GST rates coming into focus? What about the demand in the sales that you're looking at?
I think deadlines is very essential here, and deadlines will be met. The rate rationalization will come into play much before Diwali. We expect that just after this GST Council meet, there will be a plethora of notifications which will come into play. Also, please understand that the industry is struggling for certain issues, such as the donuts versus the restaurant issue, taxed at 12% versus 5%. The room tariffs versus the restaurant, whether the room tariffs when it goes to more than 7,500 becomes taxed at 18%, but a restaurant in that hotel should be taxed at 5% or 18%. So a lot of these things are also related to the festive season. The business would want certainty. The consumers would want reduction of the taxes. If this goes beyond the Diwali deadline, then the announcements made by the Prime Minister, would not achieve the purpose. Currently, the country is also facing a lot of these tariff issues. The encouragement of the local industry would certainly give confidence all around, and the consumption pattern increases. Money comes into circulation during the festive season, employment gets generated, and confidence gets increased. So I think from the overall perspective, this GST Council meet from that perspective remains very, very critical. Deadlines will have to be met. We cannot shy away from taking the responsibilities to deviate from the deadlines.
Absolutely. One last word from you, Maulik, and I wanted to understand, apart from the GST rate rationalization, that's the core subject of this council's meeting agenda. What else would you advise that the government pays attention with respect to reforms in GST 2.0?
So of course, industry at large is expecting with respect to rate rationalization only. But yeah, there are a couple of things where government needs to really think as well as calibrate is with respect to the compliances, simplified compliances. They
Yes.
also need to work on better infrastructure because there are quite a few things that they need to fix right now with respect to infra as well. And particularly with respect to your earlier question, I think is this is just in link to that. So if they really want to implement those things before festivities, so say for example, there are sectors like textile, FMCG, FMCD, like consumer durables, automobiles. These are four key sectors which are really going to see the festive trigger. We should get all sort of clarity on 3rd and 4th September itself that how you want to implement, because we
Sure.
understand there is a lot of inventory pile up in market. People are sitting on stock. Are you supposed to go and relabel everything? Price needs to be
Yes.
revised. What all schemes and incentives needs to be passed on to the consumers as well as the retailers, distributors in the entire supply chain. Those clarities, if they are given right on time, it would make sense. But if those clarities are being deferred to, say, fag end of the month or something like just a day prior to the implementation, then it would really put industry in a situation wherein people might not be in a position to take calls. Because right now, the biggest question as well as the queries which are flowing in from industry to us is how to implement. Because, say, for example, in 20 days, implementing everything from your systems to your physical inventories to everything in transit, it's really difficult. So some sort of broad guidelines are required from those perspectives as well. And
Absolutely.
particularly more so with respect to ease of compliances, because right now people are facing a lot of issues with respect to the litigations as well. So,
Right.
like the government came up with amnesty a couple of, because even after doing all this, if, say, for example, in pharmaceutical, if my API is into 18% and my drug is going to be in 5%, it's going to result into inverted duty structure. Then what sort of benefit we are going to pass on? If they are not going to bring services under the refund of inverted duty structure, then that's also going to create a problem. Like in
Absolutely.
12%, there are work contract services. So if that is not answered, and if that is going to sit in 5%, ultimately it's going to increase a lot of costs everywhere. So these are some
Absolutely.
critical questions that they need to address.
Right. Abhishek, what's your point?
So I think there are two very important aspects which industry and consumers will watch very carefully. One is whether the government will come into some sort of a price fixation, and so that the benefit of this rate reduction gets passed on to the consumer. So will it happen in entirety, or will it happen only for the essential products? That will be the key factor, because now there is a sunset clause for anti-profiteering. The government would want to pass on this benefit from the industry to the consumer. So price fixation for essential commodities will come into play. This is my expectation in some form or the other, with a defined methodology. The second real aspect is that the tax cascading happens not only with the taxes on the output side, it also happens with the taxes which are on my input side. So input tax credits, there are hundreds of these disputes on different parameters, whether these are block credits or disallowance of these credits, etc. I think while the government has a clear endeavor on the output side, this GST council meet, especially the industry, is also watching it very carefully, that how the tax cascading aspect is addressed to issue these guidelines with respect to the input tax credit. So I think both of these elements will be very, very closely watched.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Maulik. Thank you so much, Abhishek, for sharing with us all those deep insights. Of course, this is a topic that merits much longer discussion, but we are completely out of time on this one. But more days to follow, and we will continue to see all the developments and get you into a conversation yet again once the finalization of rates is done. Thank you so much for all your insights, and I hope this has given a lot of clarity to all our viewers as well with regards to, yes, on the one hand, we are happy about the GST rationalization of rates. We are happy about the reforms that are coming in, but there are several issues that the government must think in tandem as well, so that the industry concerns are also resolved in time right before the festive season. But the good part is that this festive season should be able to see a lot of consumption demand and an uptick on sales as well. Many thanks for being with us, viewers, on this special platform.